Hello, everyone. This is Avellina Balestri, the Editor-in-Chief of Fellowship in Fairy Dust, and we are here tonight to interview Josh Carias, who is a musical theater performer in Northern Virginia, about a number of themes in the musicals he has performed in or released covers of. So, Josh, lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
I
signed up for this.
You did. So first up, what are some of the recent musicals that you have performed in?
Most recently, I was in a production of Godspell with Hope Theater in Warrenton, and prior to that, Jesus Christ Superstar with Fauquier Community Theater in Fauquier County.
Oh, nice.
Also in Warrenton. Why did I distinguish those two? They're like 5 minutes away from each other.
Maybe it's like a Virginia thing, you know.
We shared a rehearsal space.
Sense of local pride. I don't know. Yeah, but so what roles did you play in these musicals?
In Jesus Christ Superstar, I was Annas, one of the chief priests, specifically Caiaphas's father-in-law, despite the fact that our Caiaphas was at least 20 to 30 years older than me, but we waived that point. And I also understudied the role. I also understudied the role of Simon the Zealot, which involved about 20 seconds for a costume change.
Oh, wow.
That was fun.
Yeah. No, you feel like Superman.
Fun, I mean the exact opposite of fun. And in Godspell, I played the characters of John the Baptist and Judas, who are traditionally played by the same actor.
Oh, cool. So for people who don't know, like, what are the main kind of plot lines of Jesus Christ Superstar and Godspell? And are they like similar in their, general kind of run, or how would you distinguish them from each other?
That's an interesting question. And before I answer, I'm curious, do you know the answer to the question?
Okay, I know about Jesus Christ Superstar from the film. I don't know about Godspell.
Okay, because they're the same story. They're both different adaptations of the gospel story.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I would have thought that. I was sort of thinking, obviously, they did derive from the gospels, but I wasn't sure how closely, for example, in version, because Jesus Christ Superstar, it's kind of a rock opera of the gospels in a way. So,
very, very much so.
Yeah.
Whereas Superstar is very much, as you said, a rock opera based on very specifically the events of Holy Week. So it pretty much opens not quite on Palm Sunday, but shortly before it. And then Palm Sunday is about like 15, 20 minutes into the show. And then it goes from there to mostly following Judas's perspective on the betrayal all the way up to the crucifixion and ending when Jesus is put in the tomb. There is a cat knocking over many things behind me, but we'll ignore that.
The true actor in the room. Getting the attention. Stealing the spotlight.
This is what I get for closing my studio door, apparently.
Yeah.
So that one ends on the Jesus being put in the tomb. There's actually traditionally no resurrection scene in Jesus Christ Superstar, nor in Godspell, actually.
Interesting.
Godspell starts more at the beginning of the story. It actually opens with just a bunch of people arguing different philosophies, from Socrates to Aquinas. Hegel is one of them. L. Ron Hubbard, I believe. There's just a good old handful. I sang a bit with Marianne Williamson, and from there it just is this cacophony of insanity. Anyone who's actually done this prologue, it's called Tower of Babel, is probably having like PTSD flashbacks as I'm describing it.
You shared with me a clip of that, and I totally vibe what you're saying there. I mean, it sounded like such a complicated piece there.
It is a cappella musical chaos, and we as a cast, honestly, it took us until like the week of the show to feel anything resembling comfortable with it. And even then, we ran it before house opened every single night.
Wow, that's impressive. I don't envy you guys, but clearly you managed to get it together. Kind of the show must go on even in a cacophony kind of thing.
And from there, John the Baptist interrupts this and starts baptizing people, singing "Prepare ye the way of the Lord." And then after that, we get Jesus coming in, and from there it goes to just sort of a summary of Jesus telling his parables. Like, pretty much the entire script is word for word straight out of the Gospel of Matthew.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
Just collecting various parables. Frequently, though, the script is generally taken more as a suggestion. The main thing with Godspell is that it's meant to feel very real and very, very much a communal experience. So our particular production was set in a coffee shop, and it was in modern dress. All of the characters are simply given the names of the actors playing them, with the exception usually of Jesus and Judas. We actually had a bit of an argument about that one. Not like a heated argument, just difference of opinions in that I didn't want my character to be identified as Judas. And the director said, if you had any name other than Joshua, I would let you get away with that, and I will be totally for it. But since your name is Joshua, which is the English version of Jesus' Hebrew name, that's not going to work.
Interesting. And, I think a lot of people actually forget that Joshua is the, anglicized version of basically Jesus's, Yeshua, Hebrew name. So that's really interesting. It's interesting how the musical does that, where they're trying to make it very relevant by keeping the actors' names and such. I mean, it does sound quite similar to the general feeling you get with Superstar, of trying to make it kind of present by having all the characters in modern dress and so forth.
Interestingly, when I did Superstar, we did quite the opposite. We took it all historically accurately.
Oh,
and I've
wow.
never seen any production of Jesus Christ Superstar do that before.
No. I mean, obviously, like in the movie, it's it's not historically accurate. It's a little hit or miss. You get some that's just totally wild, totally like,
the 1971 movie, you get Caiaphas wearing the Taj Mahal as a hat.
Yes. Yeah, it's just sort of wild. And then some, they go a little more kind of homespun Bible play kind of vibe to the clothing. But it certainly isn't historically accurate, but it's a bit of a toss-up. But yeah, no, that's quite interesting how your, version really went for the historical accuracy in the costuming.
Like our costuming director, her name is Heidi, she went to great lengths, specifically, I remember, for the costume for Caiaphas, to make it as close to what an actual high priest would have worn back in those days, to the point where he had, and I don't know the exact details of it because I didn't, do the research like she did, but he had this thing that he wore with this giant metal plate on his chest with like 9 different gemstones on it, and apparently like they were somewhere in Leviticus or Numbers or Deuteronomy or one of those books. It like outlines what gems are to be on that and in which specific places, and she like went line by line through that to replicate that perfectly.
I mean, that is impressive. And it's interesting you should mention that, because I actually remember as a child, like the beginner's Bible, they had the little children's illustrated, versions of the Bible. And I remember, in fact, being really fascinated with the illustration of like the high priests with the gemstones and the multicolored kind of rainbow breastplate thing. So yeah, no.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. I mean, that is really fascinating. I don't know I imagine it's not like, it doesn't really exist now within Judaism, without the temple and everything. But
I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't either. I should ask someone. I imagine not, due to the sort of priesthood not really being a thing without the temple. But it's just fascinating to be able to recreate that kind of religious apparel in order to do, a musical, which typically isn't associated with that. So it's really interesting. And so
silence.
So what would you say, like, from a kind of, I guess, spiritual perspective, can be taken from both of these from both of these musicals? Like particularly, what sort of sticks out in both of them?
So I am a Catholic like you, and the director for Jesus Christ Superstar was also Catholic, and that was the main reason I auditioned for the show in the first place, because the text of Jesus Christ Superstar and the perspective that it takes can clash very easily with Catholic theology. In particular, there is a general vibe throughout the show where there's this questioning of whether Jesus is just a man with delusions of grandeur, as it were, and even Jesus almost seems to question that himself. Coming from Judas's perspective, Judas is asking that question practically throughout the whole show. The title song "Superstar" is sort of a weird figurative stepping back from the actual events of the story after Judas has committed suicide. Spoilers for a 2,000-year-old biblical story. Yeah. He comes back and like pops more to a contemporary perspective and asks Jesus all these questions of, why did you come when you came? Did you know you were going to die? If you had come now, you could have reached the entire world because we have mass communication.
And very kind of modern questions, too. Like very,
Whereas Jesus's song, Gethsemane, is him, it's the agony in the garden, him asking God to let the cup pass away from him. And then from there, it goes into a very emotional and very raw form of prayer where he's almost the way the lyrics are written, he's asking God why he has to die, as if he doesn't understand it. And depending upon the perspective the actor takes playing that, it can come across as what could be considered a Catholic heresy, wherein Jesus doesn't know he's God, or Jesus is just a man bestowed with divine powers, or various other Christological heresies.
You know what this reminds me of? The issues with The Last Temptation of Christ.
Is that the movie where Willem Dafoe plays Jesus?
Okay, I haven't
seen it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but just the concept of Willem Dafoe as Jesus is fascinating to me.
As I've said many times with that film, and I mean not just the film, but like the story, the novel, and what was made into the film, like only a dissident Greek Orthodox dude and a dissident Roman Catholic could possibly have concocted this thing, because it is like a very strange drug trip. With moments of profundity. It has its moments, and then it has a lot of weird, and a lot of borderline or kind of outright treading into heretical territory. So it's an interesting one there.
So in Jesus Christ Superstar, our director was very much trying to pay respect to the original biblical tale. Like, that's why he chose to go with historically accurate dress, do everything as historically accurately as he could. The Roman soldiers who appeared in the show were given a handful of unscripted lines of actual Latin to say. So like as they were marching through, instead of like shoving someone along saying move or whatever, they would say that in Latin. And they had our centurion was just drilling stuff with the Romans off to the side while everyone else was doing the music stuff, because the Romans don't sing anything. They're just sort of, they're not even really in the script.
Except for Pilate.
Except for Pilate. He does get quite a lot of singing to do. Who is my favorite?
Yeah, he is absolutely my favorite character in Superstar. And I mean, generally, frankly, one of my favorite characters in the Passion narratives, because on the one hand, he's sympathetic, but he's very relatable in how he caves to the pressure. And in Superstar, certainly in the film rendition, they did some very striking things with regards to him getting blood on his hands and washing it in the bowl, and the bowl turns like red, very distinctly red. And
for that scene, we had this bowl made of what's called sugar glass. So there was no water in it, but as he's washing his hands, like it's literally like right at the end of his final song where
Yeah.
where he's sending Jesus off to be crucified. Die if you want to, you innocent puppet,
Yeah.
is his line. And then after he washes his hands, he takes the bowl and just throws it, and it shatters.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's powerful. I like that a lot.
And very sticky.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, that must have been a lot to clean up.
Apparently, another group uses the theater space that we were in.
Oh, those poor people!
Well, either it wasn't cleaned up properly, or there were just bits that people missed when they were sweeping up, just natural human error. But apparently the next day there were complaints sent in from the other group saying, what are all these actors just spitting cough drops all over the floor everywhere? and we were all just completely baffled as to what on earth this complaint was, until somebody actually stepped on something and went, oh, ew. It's the sugar bowl. Well,
we can take this as some sort of an analogy for, human error, Pilate, the passion. We can tile this in to be somehow symbolic. The quality of sin that remains sticky after the fact.
You're really reaching for that one.
I know. I do the reaching. I do the hard reaching just for you. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so meanwhile, while Jesus Christ Superstar is about sort of telling the actual events from the perspective of Judas and all the people who were with Jesus or against him, and showing all the differing perspectives, like the perspectives of the high priests who wanted him dead because they feared the wrath of Rome, all this stuff, and just asking these questions of who really was Jesus without ever definitively answering them. It's always left for the audience to interpret ourselves. Godspell takes a completely different approach, in that it's all about the community that forms around Jesus and the impact he has on those around him. As he's telling all these parables and inviting other people to join him in song, essentially it's a cast of 10 people, and everyone gets a solo at some point, and each character has their own little journey that's not scripted. It's just completely invented by the actors playing them. Like we had we had one character who one of our actors decided to play a homeless woman. One of our actors was a nurse, and they were all supposed to be just regular people from today, as if they were meeting Jesus and learning his teachings.
And I think that's an interesting parallel to the sort of attitude that Superstar takes with, like, well, why didn't you come today? Everything would have been like a little bit of that questioning within it. Whereas Godspell actually is like, well, here's some commonalities, if you will, about if he had come today. You would have still had the same, frankly, human connection, I think, as you would have had at any time in history. Like, in other words, history, I think, has more consistency than we think in many ways, because the human soul is still the human soul. And it doesn't matter when Christ came, particularly, he was still going to make an impact on the people that he encountered. And especially the ordinary people he, encountered and changed their lives.
Yeah, and having played oddly villainous roles in both of those shows, it's a very different perspective that I took throughout it. Like in Superstar, it was very much, okay, the way this show is written, I am playing a sniveling, evil little mastermind, and I am just milking every moment of it. Annis is like a super tenor who spends all of his time way up here and sinister and delicious to play. Also, it can be quite strenuous. If I had, there was one time where a lot of the cast went and partied late into the night, and then we had to perform a matinee the next day, and that was the day that Anis took a lot of stuff down an octave.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it would actually be logical to think you guys were spitting out cough drops when you think about it.
I was usually downing about 3 Gatorade bottles per show.
Oh, jeez.
I had them hidden around backstage.
And did you use cough drops?
I do not use cough drops. I don't really understand them as a concept.
They're a strange.
I'll use coldies, which is as far as I'm aware, that's basically what a cough drop is, except that one's actually medicine.
Yeah,
but, no, I take coldies if I have a cold.
Okay, I see. So you don't just use them to lubricate your throat.
No, that's what liquid's for.
Interesting. Okay, that works. I mean, again, I have cough drops that I use, and I'm not even like regularly doing theater performance singing or anything, and I just use them to lubricate my throat in general, and possibly because of allergies, it gets dry and so on. But yeah, so no, that's really interesting. And then how was the experience of playing in the Godspell one?
So in Godspell, playing Judas was... It took me a while to figure out what I was going to do with the character insofar as like where the betrayal's coming from.
Right.
Because it's significantly different than the way it's portrayed in Superstar, where it's all very clearly lined out. Like you get the beginning of the show, Judas is chastising Jesus about in that show it's Mary Magdalene with the fine oils that could have been sold to feed the poor, all that jazz. You don't get much of the conflict between Jesus and Judas in Godspell, apart from more of an ideological difference. There's this delightful duet called "All for the Best," where Jesus is singing. Ultimately, it's right after the Beatitudes, and that's that. So the Beatitudes are the setup for it. And Jesus goes through the main ones, and then Judas pops in with the last one. Blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you and utter every kind of evil against you falsely. And the reason Judas comes up and says that is he's coming up and saying, this is what people are going to do to you and to everyone you're talking to because of all the things you're saying. And Jesus sort of stops that. He just kind of shuts him down, changes the subject seemingly, only to turn it around and say that there is something greater in heaven waiting for all of us. And his line ultimately is, when you feel sad or under a curse, don't forget that when you get to heaven, you'll be blessed. Meanwhile, Judas turns it around and essentially says that, no, the world is awful and people are bad to you, and it's not great. Some men are born to live at ease, doing what they please, richer than the bees are in honey. It's all for them. It's all for the people who were born into power or into wealth or any of that. And that we really have nothing to look to. And we did this as a tap number.
Interesting.
I've never seen or heard it done as a tap number before, and it was quite challenging. Terrifying for pretty much the entire cast at first, but we all spent a lot of time with it, and I feel it came out really great, especially considering this was literally my first tap solo in my life.
Oh wow, well congratulations. It sounds like it's cool that you're getting to work on like versions of these musicals that are a little different than the normal. Like they're throwing in like these little unique changes. That's just really cool to be a part of. It has to be a little bit invigorating to know, okay, we're actually adding something to the repertoire here that no one else has really done before.
So the journey that I found for Judas in Godspell was one where there's a scene nearish to the end where the adulteress is brought in, and Jesus has the let he who is without sin throw the first stone. And Judas essentially cannot accept this. Like, he walks away from it like everybody else does, because he knows he's not without sin. So he gets that point, but he's not willing to forgive. And from there, the adulteress is welcomed into the fold, and she has this utterly beautiful song. Our actress who did that was amazing. Just, people were crying. It was beautiful. But I was sitting in the back, just sort of looking over my shoulder at the whole thing, glaring, just utterly furious with Jesus for daring to touch this woman even.
Oh my gosh, interesting. So, and that's an interesting, I don't think I've really heard that done before either, that idea of Judas really reacting to Jesus's radical mercy.
Yeah, and that honestly came to me like a couple of days, I think, into the actual run of performances. It just clicked, and I took that journey from there.
Oh wow, that's a really unique idea, I think, and I think it really explains a lot about, I guess you might say, Judas's spiritual state. It's almost like he can't take in this sort of new covenant. He can't quite handle it. So whatever he was expecting, he wasn't expecting this, and that just, I like the idea of centering that upon his reaction to an act of mercy.
So when Judas comes in later when he leaves the Last Supper and comes back in and actually commits the betrayal, I forget if, no, this way was, I'm trying to remember if the script did this or if this was the director's choice. I want to say it was the director. But rather than having Judas kiss Jesus, the one I kiss is the man.
Right.
Judas comes up to Jesus fully knowing what he has come here to do, and I collapse in front of him. Like, I can't bring myself to actually do it, even though I've come to this point where there's this wall that I cannot accept what Jesus is going for here, but I also can't cross the line to actively betray him to put him to death. And then he leans down and lifts me up, and Jesus kisses Judas. Ooh. In this production.
Oh, wow.
That was the director's choice. And once I got past the very itchy beard,
oh wow.
Our Jesus, who also actually played Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar, a lot of the cast carried over between the two productions. He's just got this giant bushy beard.
An interbiblical alliance going on here.
Very much. Like, the cast of Godspell was literally 60% cast or crew from Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh my gosh.
And in a cast of 10.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I mean, it's nice though that you were able to do, again, productions that had so much overlap with each other.
Yeah.
It kind of had, and I mean, it must have been, I imagine, as you're talking about all of this, it's a very kind of meditative experience as well, like, for a Christian to be doing this kind of thing, because at the end of the day, they kind of are passion plays, and that had such an old tradition going for it in, Christianity. So it's cool to be able to see that kind of being brought out in modern mediums, which I think is a beautiful thing.
And the most beautiful thing about Godspell for me was the way the show ends is after the crucifixion. There's no Judas's suicide scene. At the point of the crucifixion, all of the characters sort of cease to be their individual characters to an extent, and they just kind of go into a finale. It starts with the body of Jesus disappears from the cross, and they all start singing. The line is "Long live God," and it's essentially them. At this point, they run out into the audience, out of the theater, singing loudly, happily. Essentially, the idea is, okay, now go out and teach all nations.
Right.
The
mass is ended. Go in peace.
Very much so. Yes. But because I'm on stage for this, because they need someone to sing this voice part.
Sure.
That we only had 4 men, so.
Oh gosh,
We only had 4 men and one of them's dead. So.
Oh wow. You had to hold down the fort.
The way
manly men.
the way we did it is, as all of the others are filing towards the front of the stage singing, Judas stayed back by the cross, just staring at it and weeping. And finally, I turned back around to the rest of the cast up, who had by this point all lined up at the front of the stage holding hands. And I slowly walked up to them and made eye contact with the adulteress. And she leaned back and took my hand. And I joined in that line, and finally started singing once again the line from the beginning of the show, "Prepare ye the way of the Lord." And
that has a very von Balthazar Dare We Hope quality to it, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not in the script. I don't think the director even did it. I think this just kind of happened.
Interesting.
Because he just said that we're just going to start filing towards the front of the stage, and for whatever reason, I just felt like I should be the last one, not in any sense of, well, this is sort of the bows, and the last one who bows is clearly the most important. And it wasn't quite the bows either.
Right.
The bows were slightly after that. It was very much a character choice of, I want Judas to have this moment, since he's not dead here. This isn't literally Judas. This is more of a figurative story. I wanted him to have that conversion moment.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of people coming to me after the show noticing that and really appreciating it. So I'm glad that it worked.
Yeah, no, that does sound, really beautiful. And I think it honestly makes a lot of sense, because I've always felt like, we don't really know 100% what became of Judas. We can certainly say he wasn't in a good place, in the sense of, what he had done, but it's really impossible for us to completely measure out a man's soul. And that is sort of definitely for me, and I definitely lean toward that kind of von Balthazar Dare We Hope philosophy, that, we certainly can hold out some hope for Judas, and in turn for all of us, because we could all be Judas at any point. And I think that that's really the important thing, is to always think of ourselves as being in the place of these characters in the Passion. And that's why Passion plays have always had a resonance, because they really are an exercise in kind of I've read in a book once, they call it like Hall of Mirrors. And so the idea is that we're supposed to see ourselves in all of these different characters. And I mean, through playing these characters even more, there's the one thing of, meditating, like with the Stations of the Cross, or, any other kind of passion reflections, but actually playing it, I think, just brings a whole nother layer of that kind of sense of solidarity, in a sense, and also a sense of awareness that we could make the same mistakes these characters made. We could also have the same redemption that these characters, may have had. So that I think definitely is poignant, and always will be.
You're reminding me of, I'd almost forgotten the crucifixion scene in Jesus Christ Superstar. It is a truly bizarre scene in the way it's set musically. There are 5 voices just oohing or awing. I think it's awing for 7 minutes straight, and it's this horrible discordant
cacophony
sound, and it makes you uncomfortable. And on top of that, the way we actually did it, the music, it's the sheet music just says, it essentially boils down to, this is weird, listen to the cast recording and you'll get a vibe for what this is supposed to sound like. The sheet music is not helpful at all.
Oh my God.
Thanks, Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Good old Andy.
Sorry, Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yes.
But we did it mostly in slow motion, and the experience of being up there for, I'm not kidding, like 5 to 7 straight minutes of just slow motion jeering as Jesus is slowly dying. It's, from a performance perspective, exhausting.
Yeah.
To just be moving in slow motion for that long. Fortunately, we did have a few brief blackouts for us to just shake it out very quickly until the lights came back on. But it was also before we started incorporating the actual slow motion and getting locked into the physicality of that and making sure it looked good, and we're working. Before we got to that point, we were very much doing the emotional aspect of it. There were these moments where some people were mourners and some people were jeerers, and there was this wonderfully sweet old woman in the cast, grandmother to many of us there, not literally, but that she's the adopted grandmother of the cast to a degree, literally playing the grandmother of one of the ensemble members, was decided at some point, who just was awful. Just suddenly out of nowhere, this sweet, friendly old lady is just screaming and jeering and laughing.
Oh my goodness.
And it was so unnerving to witness. And it really put you in this place, at least for all of us on stage, of just sort of realizing the awfulness of the crucifixion in a way that I don't think many of us had considered before, because it's different when you talk about it or when you watch The Passion of the Christ and understand the physicality of it, to whatever degree the passion may or may not be exaggerated in that film. Mm-hmm. It's different being up there and sort of being in the emotional space of it.
Yeah, and this is something that I prefer Father Patrick Peyton's 1959 film, The Redeemer, to Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. And the reason I do is I feel like Mel relied, as he usually does, too heavily upon gore and also upon these sort of zany supernatural elements. Whereas in Redeemer, you get just enough blood to like make you kind of recoil, but it's the main kind of weight of it is the emotional weight. It's very raw, the film, though, the emotional quality, and it's something, the sound of, as you said, the sound of the laughter and the jeering was something that always struck me as a kid. Whether it was the crowd laughing and jeering, the Roman soldiers laughing and jeering, the high priest trying to get people roused up to call for crucifixion. It's this sense, it's this uncanny immersion in the worst that humanity has to offer. I think that's what it is. And the uncomfortable sense that we all have a little of that in us. And I think that's really what it is when we say we bear, within us and within our nature is the condition of sin. And it's an ugly thing to witness. And I feel like the crucifixion forces us to confront this ugliness in us. And I think that also the crucifixion can bring out the best in us, because you get Veronica, you get Simon of Cyrene, you get obviously the Blessed Mother, you get all these figures, you get Saint John. But it really is, again, as I say, the Hall of Mirrors effect, where you're just confronted with the best and the worst in you, and you're bringing it all, as it were, to the cross. So yeah, I think that really does just remain profound in whatever kind of medium it's kind of performed in.
Yeah.
And
reminds me of there's a song by, I want to say the name is Ray Boltz, It's called "Feel the Nails," and it's the lyrics are, "Do you still feel the nails every time I fail? Have I crucified you, Jesus, with my sin?" And well, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And that's something that it's hard to forget when you're on stage actively crucifying an actor playing Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think a lot of people I've run into who are kind of outside of the Christian tradition, they sometimes don't understand what that means when we kind of say our sins crucified Christ. They're like, oh, so you think like individually you literally crucify? And I'm like, well, I think it has a lot to do with number one, a sense of we as a human family, we're not an island, we're a community. So there is such a thing as, again, we all bear in common a condition, as it were. We're the children of Adam, the one who severed himself from the divine communion. And so our behaviors will kind of go in an inward way, which in the end is always sort of self-destructive. And I think that when realizing this condition that we all bear, we can truly say that there is a unity, as it were, to it, and the means by which we did indeed crucify Christ. But again, even that God works, the greatest evil that sin can wreak basically is still used to bring about our redemption and our salvation, everything. And that's just the thing that really makes Christianity stand out as it does.
And that question that Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice keep trying to ask throughout Jesus Christ Superstar of, like, why did Jesus die the way he did? Like, why was that planned? Was that necessary? It's a question I've pondered a lot in my spiritual life, and the answer I've finally come upon, partly spurned on by various homilies I've heard over the years where priests have alluded to it. God could have snapped his fingers and forgiven everything. He has that power. He has that mercy. A price I don't think needed to really be paid for sin. The reason Jesus died was to serve as an illustration for us of his love.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
that's the perspective I've come to take.
I very much agree, and the way that I lean a little Franciscan with this, in that the way that I see the cross and the resurrection, it's a culmination of the incarnation. So the incarnation, the oneing of God and man, is the beginning of that miracle, and they're all interconnected. The cross was, as it were, the natural consequence of God taking on flesh and coming into the muck and mire of the human condition, that it would naturally lead to this point of the cross. There was no real way around it. Once the incarnation had occurred, there was no real way around it. This was the natural conclusion that it would take. But again, even so, there is, again, the resurrection, which basically gives us almost like, it gives us a portal through which we can see a future world. It's kind of like what you were talking about, sort of the Godspeed song, where it's saying, well, we're going to go through sufferings here, but we can look forward to heaven. And I think, heaven obviously doesn't just mean a far away place as well, because it's all about heaven and earth being wedded. The things of heaven are wed to the things of earth. Isn't that what the Exultant, which you did, by the way, as I recall, right?
Oh, yeah, yes, I did do that.
Yes.
It's been a couple of years.
It has, yeah. COVID. Things are crazy. But yeah, no, and I think that really, I think that kind of that sums up the whole mystery of it.
So many words in that exalted.
There are. Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous, but oh my
it
goodness,
is.
It's long.
I question whoever said, let's have someone sing for just 5 straight minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful song, but yeah, I could totally. I mean, when I watched your video of it, I could totally see that it's a taxing song. I mean, not song, poem,
Chant.
liturgical chant to get it to go through, and but you did very nicely. So congratulations on surviving that.
I didn't get asked to do it the following year, so.
Oh Lord. Well, don't be a glutton.
In fairness, I believe the following year I was in the midst of Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar, so I think the music director was like,
no,
give Josh a break.
Don't punish him. Don't punish. Yeah, that made sense. Well, since we're here talking about all this, would you like to sing us something from any of those productions?
Oh boy.
Anything you want to show off from your repertoire of religiously themed musicals?
Well, as it is 11:49 p.m.
It is, so you can wing it. Wing anything you want.
And my parents also live in this house.
Sing quietly. Just lean forward. Whisper.
Let me think. All right. I didn't mention, but in Godspell there is a piece called "On the Willows" that plays during the Last Supper as Jesus is essentially saying goodbye to all of the apostles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taken from Psalm. I'm not going to try to figure out what number. And it's
Psalm.
Yes. Actually, most of the songs in Godspell are either directly scriptural or lyrically pulled straight out of, I think, a Methodist or Episcopalian hymnal. I forget which. There are a couple of hymns I've seen flipping through, even the St. Michael hymnal, where I'm like, I recognize these words. That's all good gifts from Godspell, but not.
Do we know what was the writer of this a specific denomination or whatnot?
Oh, actually, I can briefly get into that. In both cases, interestingly, neither Andrew Lloyd Webber nor Tim Rice were devoutly religious. I believe they were both atheists, or at least just kind of agnostic.
Yeah.
We're just going for a good story.
Right.
And the playwright behind Godspell, I forget his name. I think it's John Michael Tabelek or something like that, but I forget if he's the original director or the writer. The writer ultimately is St. Matthew, but
the adapter.
Yes, he was an atheist who was once Christian at some point in his life, who specifically wrote Godspell because he was sick of the fire and brimstone preaching that he was seeing throughout Protestant churches that he had gone to in his life. And he wanted to focus on, oh, hang on, if you actually read the Gospels, ultimately the point is love. Why are y'all talking about all this wrath of God stuff? I'm like, yeah, there's a place for that.
Sure, but it has to be taken in. I think, frankly, it has to be read through the lens of God's love.
Yeah.
I hear a kitty cat.
Yep, that's Lucy. Hi, Lucy. Parent says go to your room because he loves you.
Yes, exactly. And there's a lot of, like, for example, Eastern Christian theologians who have commented on the fact that even the wrath of God is, as it were, the love of God wrongly received, as it were, on our end. And there's one, I forget exactly who said this, but they say, like, the fires of hell are actually lit up by, you know, the brightness of God's love. There's this parallel, and it's the way that we experience it, basically, when we are not in right order with God, as it were, which I find very interesting.
And meanwhile, the composer for Godspell is Stephen Schwartz, also known for such shows as Wicked and Pippin, among other things, who is Jewish.
Interesting. Okay.
So as far as I'm aware, not an actual Christian among the writers of either of those shows.
Wow. I mean, that is very interesting. You know, when you see, I guess it does show the kind of lasting quality of the Gospels that you can't really get away from no matter what, especially how it has permeated culture to such an extent. I mean, most people know these stories in Western culture anyway, you know, and quite a bit of Eastern culture too. It's hard to get away from it, really. It kind of haunt our imagination.
There's a lot of Jews in Broadway history, just in general.
Oh yeah.
There's even a song in, I want to say it's Spam-A-Lot by Monty Python, that's You Can't Succeed on Broadway Without Jews.
Oh my god! Wait, what was it? Was Spam-A-Lot part of you know, the Holy Grail movie, or is this something completely different?
Spam-A-Lot, I've not seen it, but as I understand it, it is a musical adaptation of the film of Monty Python's Search for the Holy Grail, whatever that film was called. I've not seen that either.
This kind of reminds me, this honestly kind of reminds me of the jokes in Robin Hood Men in Tights. Because they had like a largely Jewish cast and they were owning it. They were just having a blast with it, which was
Mel Brooks.
Yeah, exactly. And again, a lot of the actors as well, and they were just having at it. They were having fun with it. Oh my gosh. I just remember the carrot chopper circumcision machine. I'm just like, they just were like totally going wild.
Yes, that.
Oh my gosh. But yes, so would you like to sing something?
On the willows there we hung up our lyres, for our captors there required of us songs, and our tormentors mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. Sing us one of the songs of Zion. But how can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land?
Very nice.
That one's on my to-do list to record a full cover of at some point.
That would be excellent to record. It's a very, that's almost has a kind of lullaby quality to it.
It is. It very much so. It's on my playlist of music that I put on in bed.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, definitely has that general, you know, the soothing songs.
The full version eventually becomes a trio with some very lovely harmonies.
Oh, nice.
This one is actually very specifically noted in the script. Cast members should not be singing this song apart from Judas, because Judas is off stage anyway. Like that, this one is meant to be sung by the band for the show, and that's how we did it. I had the lead vocal for most of it, and then I think it was the guitarist and the pianist who were on the other vocals.
Oh wow! Well, I would love to hear if you ever do you know, a recording of it. You know how you're able to do the multiple camera overlay type thing.
I'm not sure. I haven't decided what I'm going to do as far as that, but I will be recording all the vocal parts at least, because I like to harmonize with myself.
As I've said in the past, I would definitely be down with doing a musical number with you sometime. So we should maybe pick some kind of duet or something. I could probably go toe to toe. Just. But anyway, Josh, it was great interviewing you, and I think we should totally like do another interview about Les Mis and Hunchback, because they're another whole can of worms, and they have so many Catholic themes to them going on. So I feel like we need another whole interview for the French Gothic musicals.
So today we talked about the Jesus ones. Next we'll talk about the Victor Hugo ones.
There we go. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I feel like it was appropriate to do the Jesus ones first, especially because you just were playing in them, so it was nice and fresh in your mind. But yeah, no, definitely we should come back and do the other ones, and possibly Death Note and some of the other ones we talked about, like Sweeney Todd as well, because like,
I'm always happy to talk about the musical about the ugly, sad French man.
Of course. Well, I mean, when you get down to it, I'm thinking there's just this weird thing about a lot of French stories having to do with that. So, like, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. You did get the joke.
Okay, no, really. I'm thinking like Beauty and the Beast. You know, you've got Cyrano de Bergerac. You've got, I'm sure there are other. Oh, for Phantom of the Opera, obviously.
Yeah, I was specifically going for Phantom, Beauty and the Beast, and Hunchback of Notre Dame. Those are the three big ones.
Yes, definitely. Oh, yeah. So we definitely have to talk about Phantom as well. So yeah, there's lots of music, and Hamilton. So I feel like we should take this in, you know, really, I feel like we should do a series, and we should take this in sections. So we should do like 2 at a time. We should do like 2 at a time, and then just make our way through the repertoire. And you're the man.
This is starting to sound like a podcast.
It is sounding like a podcast. Well,
I'm already in one podcast.
Well, not a podcast per se, like a little series of interviews, more like that. Because you're the man for the job. You know, you're the man for the job. But anyway, I will release you from your bondage for the night. So, and you can take credit in being the first ever full-length interview for F&F. So you have one distinction, because you solved the audio problem.
Yes, I didn't come here for an interview.
You didn't, but once you were here, I
came here to make sure you could use Zoom.
I know, but once you were here, it was like, why not? I can tap into the geek gears, and there we go. So,
hey, sure, I got 5 minutes. 1 hour later.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I will bid you adieu for tonight, and also for those watching this interview, would like to pitch Fellowship in Fairy Dust. We are an online magazine about to become print, as a matter of fact, this summer, which deals in inspiring faith and creativity and exploring the arts through a spiritual lens. And we welcome submissions of articles, nonfiction articles, short fiction stories, longer fiction stories we can break up into parts, poetry. We also allow fan fiction. So we're pretty diverse, and original artwork we run, and photography. We've got a little bit of everything going on. And we've just started our interview campaign on YouTube. And we've also been running a few drives for things we're trying to get done, like on our Patreon account, which you'll see the link at the bottom of this video, and our GoFundMe for trying to have another live conference, because we did have one back in 2019 in Oxford University out of Lady Margaret Hall, which focused on the literary legacy of J.R.R. Tolkien and his spiritual legacy as well. We're hoping to have a follow-up conference on themes of spiritual literature from the East and the West. We're hoping for that next year, COVID permitting and money permitting, basically. So that'll eventually happen. You can find the links below. So thank you for tuning in, and we hope all of you F&F fan followers have a lovely evening.
Do I get to plug anything?
You get to plug. You get to plug. You absolutely get to plug. Plug away.
So I haven't been doing a lot of YouTube videos in the past year, but I'm trying to get back into it now that I've got this whole recording studio set back up again. This computer's been out of commission for a while, and we finally just realized, oh, it was just the battery for the graphics card needed to be changed, and now it works. It worked fine. It just had a dead battery.
I mean, I know the feeling, given I just had to turn on my speaker this evening.
It was literally, oh, hang on, open it up. Okay, it's this kind of battery, and Amazon says it'll be here tomorrow. Cool. It was done in 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I've been there. I feel your pain.
But I do have a YouTube channel. It's Theater Josh. Theater spelled T-R-E, like a proper person. So I've got a handful of covers of musical theater songs on there. Most recently, I've got a couple of pieces from a recital I did at my church. Actually, just today is Sunday, Saturday. Yeah, just last night. Those were fun. I also, unrelated to anything musical theater, I say as if we don't spend like 10 minutes out of every podcast making musical theater references. I have a Transformers podcast called More Than Meets the Ear, where we review a show called Transformers Cybertron that I grew up on, which is what all of this nonsense is. This is just the entire cast of that show.
Collector. Oh my gosh.
Okay, webcam, go back where you belong. You can find us on Spotify and Google Podcasts and whatever Apple does, iTunes or something. All of the podcast places, generally speaking.
Feel free to send me the links to your YouTube and the main source for the podcast, and I'll put them under the video as well.
Yeah, those can be down there now.
Yes, they can join the throng of links.
Down there. Yes. Or over there. Or over there.
Literally
over there.
Anywhere.
We have no idea.
We have no idea. Because this is the first time we've done this. So we're literally just swinging it.
Follow my links this way.
Yes. Pretty much, yes. Oh my gosh. So is there anything else you'd like to pitch? Or
I get the YouTube, I got the podcast. That's about it. I don't know. You can find me at TFCon Chicago in October. But
there we go.
That's completely unrelated to anything we've been discussing.
So what do you do there?
I volunteer, namely, and I also this is a Transformers convention. Comes around. It comes around a couple of times a year to the U.S.
Loyal to the fandom.
Oh, of course. But I also very frequently, besides the volunteering, I'll audition for the live script readings, and I've been in them 3 times now.
Oh, nice.
The person who runs those is getting to the point where every time I approach the mic for the audition, she's like, "Josh, go away."
Oh no, you've become too familiar.
We're good friends. She's just messing with me.
Oh, okay. It's an inside.
I once tackled someone to get to the mic. Okay.
Okay. As long as you've been lovably included in sort of the inside group there, I guess it won't matter. You'll be good. Well, anyway, I hope everyone has a lovely evening, and thank you once again, Josh, for allowing us to interview you. Now, let me just figure out how to actually stop the recording without deleting
There should be a button somewhere that says stop recording.